Thank you for coming to our second class. I'm seeing new faces today. For those students, I'm Professor Jose Alvarez. Today, I'm going to talk about some bases of wastewater and water treatment. So please feel free to pick up some handouts over there. Our agenda for this class is going to start with a warm-up activity, followed by the objectives for this class, the last class overview, definition of wastewater, types of wastewater, why do we need to treat water, how do we remove contaminants or pollutants from wastewater, and at the very end, I'm going to talk about some individual and group assignments for the upcoming classes. All right, guys. What do you see in these pictures? The first picture that we have here. You see again? It's a lake, right? What about the second picture? A waterfall, correct. And the third picture, it's an iceberg. All right. Well, now we're going to move in the second set of pictures. The first picture, it's an erosion process, right? And what about here? Water contamination. And it's due to a chemical process or a chemical pollution source. And what about here? Water contamination too, but it's due to solid waste. Now guys, you will be able to see a big difference between the two sets of pictures. In the first one, you check that the water and the water bodies were definitely clean at all. But in the second set of pictures, you see a lot of pollution, a lot of contamination. So that's the main difference, pollution. Pollution is important to study in water bodies, and that is wastewater. And that's the importance to study water treatment. Well, the objective for this class. At the end of this class, you guys are going to be able to define basic terms related to water treatment. Number 2, associate with real life different types of wastewater and their sources. Number 3, identify potential threats to source water in order to classify wastewater by sources of pollution. Number 4, gain familiarity with the 3 basic options of water treatment for addressing threats from water contamination. And number 5, appreciate the importance of viewing water supply protection and water treatment from a technical perspective and a social responsibility. Is there any questions about last week's topics so far? No? All right. The last class we were viewing the water cycle and its processes. These are the processes: evaporation, condensation, precipitation, collection, infiltration, surface runoff, and snowmelt runoff. These processes are very important to study wastewater, and those processes are synthesized here in this picture. So now we're going to see wastewater more in depth. From here, if you have any questions, just feel free to ask. All right. What is wastewater? In simple words, it's water used. But if we would like to describe more in depth, it's the water that has been used and contains domestic, industrial, institutional, and commercial waste products. That's the definition by excellence. That's the definition. Well, now we're gonna make a classifications of the wastewater depending on the type of use. The first type of use, we have domestic wastewater. We're really familiar with that. So that's the wastewater that comes from homes, including toilet waste and water used for laundry, bathing, and dishwashing, and other activities that you develop at your own homes. That's the domestic one. There is another one type of wastewater, and it's compounded by industrial, commercial, and institutional. Absolutely different from domestic wastewater because of its constituents. And that's the water which comes from places like factories, restaurants, stores, schools, hospitals, gas stations, and whatever industry you would like to put on the table now. And it's also called ICI, Industrial, Commercial, and Institutional Flow. Is there any questions? Just feel free to ask. Well, why do we need to treat wastewater? What is the importance of treating wastewater? Well, we have very important issues here. Number one, it is important to remove constituents or contaminants that could harm people or the environment itself. Number two, causes a demand for dissolved oxygens. In other words, lower dissolved oxygens levels or concentrations in streams. We would like to keep those levels high because depending on these levels, it's the quality of the aquatic life. Number three, adds nutrients, nitrates, and phosphate to cause excessive growth in plants, which is also called eutrophication. Number four, increases suspended solids or sediments in streams. It's a parameter called turbidity. And number five, we need to treat wastewater to remove common constituents in wastewater such as organics, solids, nutrients, and pathogens. What happens to treated wastewater? What is the final disposal of treated wastewater? In whatever place. But the final disposals is mainly about from effluent of wastewater treatment plants in water bodies like streams, lakes, ground soil, mainly. And it may also be reused, for example, for irrigation or industrial processes. But we have to keep in mind what kind of treatment are we going to use to keep that use. From the wastewater, from houses, when the wastewater just leaves, it's going to pass in through a conveyance process before getting the plant or the wastewater plant. And in the plants, there are going to be different kind of processes, mainly secondary and tertiary processes. And after doing that, you are going to have the treated water. And the treated water can be used in for different functions. For example, it could be used for irrigations, toilets, and groundwaters, and even it could be reused for human consumption, like drinking water. How do we remove these constituents? Well, there are so many techniques to remove constituents from wastewater, and day by day is coming across new technologies and processes to treat water. But there are separated in three different kind of treatments: physical, chemical, and biological. The first one, the physical, it's the more simple kind of treatment that we can have, because we're gonna remove just solids. It's a kind, it's as its name, physical treatment process. So the only thing that you are gonna remove are big solids, not solid that are dissolved, are just solid that you can see. So you are able to detect. So by separation process. So you can find a technique here like screens as an example. But you also have the chemical and the biological processes to separate dissolved solids, which are more complicated to separate, more expensive to implement, but they are also very important in a plant process, because due to that processes, you are going to be able to reuse the water in the way that you want, irrigation or for human consumption like drinking. We have some examples of technologies for chemical and biological. Coagulant tanks is an example for chemical, and for biological we have aeration basin. So those treatments are really important to take into account when we would like to operate or design an operational system for treatment plants. Well, the first assignment, which is due next week, is gonna be individual assignment, and you have to calculate how many liters of wastewater does a person produce per day. You should include your home as an example, so it varies depending on your particular case, and draw the daily flow pattern of our home. And part B, does this value vary from town to town? If so, which variables should be taken into consideration to calculate the production? So that's the first assignment due to next week. Do you have any question about this? If so, just contact me by email or by phone, and I could answer the questions that you have. Just feel free to do it. Well, the other assignment is a group assignment. I think that next week you probably are going to have a visit for a plant facility in which you're gonna able to see all the processes through a wastewater treatment plant. It's important that you ask everything that you need to know in order to solve this assignment. This assignment is gonna be in groups of 3 to 4. I think that maybe 4 according to the number of students that we have. I will organize that groups, and I'm gonna let you know in which groups are each of you. And the assignment has the visit as a component of the assignment, and a presentation that you should be doing in PowerPoint about 5 to 10 minutes long. There are several questions that are posted on your blackboard that should be answered in the presentation. So in the presentation, you are going to show every single process, detailed and compressed, for this case, of the visit that you were doing at that moment in the plant. Again, ask questions during the tour and use the websites indicated to help gather information. Just make sure of doing that. The presentation will be given a week after we finish the visits. So be prepared to do that. Thank you again for coming to my class. Please feel free to contact me if there are any questions that I can solve now, after class, or in the week. And thank you again. Have a good day.